Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 15, Episode 81. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Monday. Steelers Nation Day, the Divisional Round has wrapped up. The entire AFC North has been eliminated from the playoffs. The four teams remaining represent the Chiefs, the Bills, the Eagles, and the Commanders. So sets up an exciting championship weekend next Sunday, but of course Baltimore nor Pittsburgh nor anybody from the AFC North will be represented. How you doing?
Happy Monday. I think if we learned anything or relearned anything throughout the divisional round of the playoffs is you better not turn the football over. First and foremost. It was entertaining. I thought all four games were pretty entertaining overall. A few of them obviously closer than the other ones. The game to end things last night with the Ravens and the Bills for the turn. Even though they had all those turnovers in the game, the Ravens still managed to keep it close, and then obviously go down there and get a late touchdown and come down to a 2-point conversion. And I wouldn't have had Mark Andrews on my bingo card as someone who played a big role in the Ravens' loss, specifically in the fourth quarter. Had some drops in that game. Obviously had a fumble and then dropped the 2-point conversion late, which was kind of the final nail in the coffin for them. But I mean, when you look in totality at the quarterbacks, 4 quarterbacks remaining here in the playoffs. You obviously have Patrick Mahomes for the Chiefs. You have Jaden Daniels for the Commanders. You have Jalen Hurts for the Eagles, and you have Josh Allen for the Bills there. Obviously, with Jaden Daniels being a rookie, but I mean, you go back and roll back through your head kind of what you saw out of him throughout his rookie season. He looks to be the real deal overall. And I think another kind of takeaway is all 4 of these quarterbacks remaining here have a level of mobility to them, right? They can get out in space and they can make some moves. Obviously, Josh Allen, a bigger guy, but have seen in the past what he can do with his legs, those sort of things there. And it's hard not to look at what the Eagles are able to do with their ground game with Saquon Barkley and be able to rip off those double, triple explosive plays there. But it's hard to not just look at the quarterback position altogether when you look at these 4 remaining teams, right?
Sure. And the last 4 teams all have homegrown quarterbacks, 3 of them first-round picks. Jalen Hurts the exception. He was the Eagles' second-round pick. And, I thought about that a lot, Dave. We talk about Pittsburgh's need for a quarterback. It's obvious. It's what any team without a franchise guy is searching for. And Pittsburgh has, to their credit in a sense, tried every avenue to acquire quarterbacks. Go sign the veteran former first-round pick trying to revive his career in Trubisky. Go sign the true veteran coming off a bad year in Russell Wilson. Go trade for Fields. So when that market opportunity arises, go draft a first-round quarterback in Kenny Pickett. And nothing has really worked. But I think the conclusion is, while those options are all still on the table for Pittsburgh in 25, is the way they're going to find a long-term solution, whoever that may be, is by drafting one in the first round. That is how the majority of teams that are competitive have done it. It's homegrown. It doesn't have to be a top 3 or top 5 pick. I think there's plenty of exceptions that prove that. But the way to getting out of this hole or this purgatory Pittsburgh is in resides in drafting a quarterback. Now, this is probably not the year to do it based on Pittsburgh picking 21st, based on a weaker quarterback class. But inevitably, for Pittsburgh to get out of the hump, as they did with Ben in 2004, the answer has to be drafting a quarterback, because that's what you see around the league. that's what you see in the Steelers' own history.
Absolutely. It's hard to argue with that. And yes, not all. I mean, Mike Tomlin even hit on it and was asked, kind of, you have to be top 10 to get in other words, you have to go backwards just in the franchise and have a losing season and pick early to be able to get a top franchise quarterback. And he was quick to remind everybody that Lamar Jackson went late first round and Jalen Hurts went in the second round, but that's not always going to happen. I mean, those are more exceptions to the rule. Now, you should scout these guys at this point in the organization, and let's you hit on it. We've talked about this quarterback class, at least the perception of it entering draft season here, not one that's overly top loaded with talent. And I said this several years ago, and if you don't have a franchise quarterback, should you draft one every year in the attempt to at least take a dart throw at it and at least maybe get you a good 3-4 year backup quarterback in the meantime. So thinking ahead to this year's draft and not imagining the Steelers trading up to get one of the top 1, 2, or 3 quarterbacks in this year's draft, should they take that dart throw at some point during this draft? Especially because they, up until last week, they had 0 quarterbacks under contract for the 2025 season. They obviously do have one, now, but should they take a dart throw at some point during this draft and draft a quarterback, Alex?
I'm largely against that. It depends a little bit case by case, the player, the situation, the board, but if you're talking more mid-round quarterback or late-round quarterback, I don't see the value there. I don't see the path to figuring out when that guy plays unless somebody gets hurt. And once you get past the first, round, the hit rate for quarterback, which is already a coin flip to begin with, even in the first round, really dramatically nosedives. Yes, there are exceptions in Dak Prescott, Brock Purdy. Of course, everyone cites Tom Brady, but again, you look at the commonality between even the teams that lost that were in the divisional round and some of the exceptions to homegrown. They were first round quarterbacks, still Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford. They were in that trade, swapped for each other several years back. The commonality is a first round quarterback. Again, I agree with Tomlin. It does not need to be a top 3, top 5 pick. You've seen Mahomes, Allen, Lamar. Those guys were not that level of selection, but they are first round kind of guys. And so to me, that is still the mantra, first round quarterback.
Well, if you continue to have non-losing seasons, but get wiped out in the first round or the second round of the playoffs, you're not going to be picking early enough unless you trade up.
That's what you would have to. That's what Buffalo did. That's what the Chiefs. Right. The Chiefs had a good year before drafting Mahomes, right? And Lamar was the 32nd overall pick. But my favorite Lamar Jackson stat is that wasn't even Baltimore's first choice in the first round. They took a 25-year-old former Pirates minor league relief pitcher, Hayden Hurst, before they even took Lamar Jackson. They traded back up in the first round to get him. So they had Hayden Hurst on their board higher than Lamar. Mahomes went, what did Mahomes go overall? 11th, 10th, 12th? I think Josh Allen went 7th overall. So, I mean, those teams weren't miserable when they drafted those quarterbacks. They were competent teams and they moved up. They were aggressive. So that's why I say you don't have to have a top 3 pick.
All right. Mahomes was 10th overall in his draft there. When did Josh Allen go?
I think he was 7th. And the Chiefs the year before were 12-4 in the year, that led to the draft of them taking Mahomes. What was Buffalo the year before they took Josh Allen?
And Josh Allen was 7th overall in
Buffalo
2018.
Was 9-7 the year before they took Josh Allen, that led them to, being slotted to in the draft and then trade up and get him. But what was Baltimore the year before they took Lamar? That would have been in 2017 too. They were 9-7. So we have examples of teams that were in Pittsburgh's situation. They were 9-7, okay teams that aggressively moved up and found their quarterback.
All right, if you roll through that sort of thing's probably not going to happen though for the Steelers in 2025, right?
Correct. Yeah, this year does not seem to be the year. I'm just saying that at some point, that is the path for Pittsburgh to get out of the purgatory they reside in right now.
Kind of looking at some loose rankings from who Jordan Reed, who I think does a pretty good job overall as a draft analyst for ESPN. You definitely see proof of his work in tape study when looking at his Twitter account and all like that. I think he does a good job. But his initial draft rankings, I think, as of the 13th of January. He has Cam Ward out of Miami. He has Shadur Sanders out of Colorado. Both he has projected range of first round guys. Jalen Milroe out of Alabama, early to mid day 2. He has him. Dylan Gabriel from Oregon, late day 2. Quinn Ewers finally decided to declare. He has a late day 2, early day 3 grade on him. Jackson Dart, late day 2, early 3 out of Ole Miss. Then you get into Curtis Rourke out of Indiana. I mean, a lot of these, it falls off really, really quick of guys that you go, who? Kind of situation there. So, it rolls back to what we said. Just it doesn't seem to be a great quarterback class, and not even really at the top. Once you get, I don't know what your early thoughts are on Cam Ward and Shadur Sanders. Sanders obviously has background draft NFL pedigree with Deion Sanders and all, but I think there's obviously some flaws in his game, and got some height disadvantages to some degree. Really, I think Cam Ward to some degree as well too. But this is not, in other words, this is not the year that we're going to see probably the Steelers make a jump to get a quarterback.
Yeah, this is probably not the season, but I'm just pointing out, and it's a pretty obvious point I think I'm making, is that just the path to get out of this hole is for a first round quarterback, and there's no guarantee that the next first round quarterback you draft is going to be the guy, as Kenny Pickett clearly showed, but that is going to be the ultimate path. Pittsburgh may scuttle around with Fields and other veterans this offseason. That seems to be the most likely approach, and I've endorsed the idea of bringing back Fields and trying to work with him and seeing what his development is like. But in all likelihood, the long-term solution is going to be that first-round quarterback, as it was true for every team except the Eagles, still standing in the playoffs, and the Eagles took Hurts in the second round. Dave, some minor bit of Steelers news coming in right now. Veteran running back Jonathan Ward is coming back to Pittsburgh on a futures contract per Aaron Wilson. Ward was briefly on Pittsburgh's 53-man roster throughout the 2024 season when injury struck to Patterson and Jalen Warren. Mainly played on special teams, did some kick returns, got a couple of carries, didn't initially sign on that waiver future contracts, but he is going to be back with Pittsburgh this offseason.
All right. And how many running backs now does that give them under contract for next season? Obviously, Najee's not technically. Jalen Warren will be back, but he's set to be a restricted free agent right now, so he's technically not under contract. They did as part of the futures guys. Aaron Shamklin was part of that initial wave. Oh, who else was that? I think that might have been it, wasn't as far as running backs.
That you mentioned, Cordero Patterson.
Patterson, yeah, but we kind of wonder if he might not make it to middle of March there, and then obviously Ward now back in the fold there, so starting to get some bodies in at that position.
Yeah, he impressed in the summer with his speed, his versatility. He had a good camp, had I think a leg injury on the final day of training camp, missed some of the summer, but got healthy for the start of the regular season, and then got called up when Pittsburgh had some backfield issues. So, you're talking a number 3 type of running back, and practice squad type of guy, but glad he's back in the fold.
All right.
Do you have any final thoughts on the quarterback discussion, Dave? We kind of cut you off there.
Just, I think at this point, knowing and understanding and having known and understand that probably the path to getting out of this funk with the Steelers and being able to compete for a Super Bowl, once again, goes through the franchise quarterback position in a draft, I don't know that you want to take the path of tying up a lot of cash in the position overall, especially if you got a guy like Russell Wilson, and we'll have to see what his price is. We talked earlier when things were a little bit rosier with the Steelers, thinking, what's the price tag going to be on the Russell Wilson? Is it going to be 30? Is it going to be, 40 million and all like that? In no way, shape or form, especially when it comes to, if you do go out and re-sign a guy like Russell Wilson at, let's say, 30 to 40 million, you can't guarantee any more money past the first year with him. You just can't. You've got to put yourself in a position where you can get out from underneath him after 1 year with, let's say, a 30, 40, or $50 million cash investment with him. But you've got to be able to put yourself where you're not going to cripple yourself with the guaranteed money past this year. And really, the same really can be said for a guy like Justin Fields, but I would be more apt. You heard Mike Tomlin talk about quarterback mobility. Fields is obviously a lot younger. Yeah, I would look at some of these models of what some of these teams are doing with the quarterback mobility, with the zone read, trying to build off that. Take a good look at, how these teams are using that quarterback mobility to their advantage, and just try to see if I can win some games that route. And maybe at worst, you have a longer term backup quarterback or eventual mentor to the next guy via hopefully 2026 draft for this team. So it is hard right now as a fan of the Steelers, if you're specifically looking at the two quarterbacks in Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. It is very hard to make a all-in impressive investment in a guy like Russell Wilson.
But if you're going to pay him, just call it 30 million. It's hard to not give him. It's hard to say, we like you for 30 million, Russ. We don't like you enough to put in some guaranteed money in that second year, that contract, though. That's a tough line for Pittsburgh to walk. It's trying to commit without committing. And I don't know if Russ's camp's going to love that approach.
How many more games do you think Russell Wilson can win you than a Justin Fields?
I don't know. I don't have a great answer to that. We could discuss if Fields started the entire season. Would Pittsburgh's outlook look any different? I don't think it radically would have changed. But, who knows? It's impossible to predict. But my point is, if you're coming to us and saying we want to ink you long term, we also want these really early escape hatches. It's kind of talking out of both sides of your mouth. If you're Pittsburgh's camp, I get why you do it, and I agree. You don't need to financially tie yourself to Russ. The one good thing Pittsburgh has done, despite all the issues of quarterback, is they've not financially anchored themselves to any quarterback. When guys haven't worked out, they've been able to escape very easily. Trubisky was not that big of a deal. A little bit of dead money there, but not killer. Pickett, obviously a rookie. Russ on the minimum. Fields was brought in super cheap, and so financially they've not had to invest much. But it's hard to say, yeah, we like your Russ, 30 million per year, going to make you, one of the highest paid quarterbacks and one of the highest paid players on the team. But we don't want to do that guaranteed money we do with big money quarterback contracts.
Well, I don't know that. Look, whoever your quarterback is, you need a better running game. You need more weapons around them, right?
Sure.
And if you don't add weapons to this offense, you're gonna easily be right back where you are this year. And you just have to, where does the value come in, paying Russell Wilson more and more guaranteed money, as opposed to Justin Fields?
Yeah, no, I get that. I'm not advocating necessarily to pay Russ over Fields.
Right.
I'm just saying if you do pay Russ, it's hard to lay out that contract structure, I think, the way that you're laying it out.
Is there a team out there you think that's going to look at Russ and say, almost like the Steelers did, and you know, uh, we're close enough where we think maybe a veteran guy like Russell Wilson could put us over the top and get us into the playoffs?
I don't know. It's going to be tougher because there's more scarcity at quarterback this year, both in free agency. We'll see what happens to Sam Darnold. Maybe his odds of hitting free agency have gone up, but he's a little damaged goods right now, kind of like Russ. And the quarterback class is not nearly as strong. And so that may just create more opportunities because there simply aren't as many quarterbacks to fill all the quarterback needy teams. But what again, I think last year the allure of Russ was partly we can kind of fix him and he can kind of be the guy over the top, but also he was super cheap, like because you knew Denver was on the hook for the offset. This year you're gonna have to pay this guy, so I don't know if teams will be as enthused about Russ this year as they were last year. I think Russ certainly wants to come back to Pittsburgh. I don't think he wants to be on his third team in 3 years and consistently move his family around and start anew. And he's got a really good relationship with Mike Tomlin. I don't think he wants to go try to find that with a new head coach somewhere. So I think Russ certainly would like to come back. If not, I just simply don't know what his other options would be.
Right. All right. Okay.
Let me ask you this. Looking at divisional weekend, besides quarterback, which is obvious but important, what other themes did you see in terms of the teams that won that are playing now in championship weekend next Sunday that Pittsburgh should be modeling after? What things are these successful teams doing that Pittsburgh is lacking?
I think you got to be able to be decent situationally. Obviously, you've got to be a team that can get 1 yard on fourth down one. You look at the takeaways at what Buffalo had. They had 3 of them, but how many of those were really not more driven by carelessness by the opposing offense? I mean, they all count, right? But you look at that in particular, and I think even you look at some of the ones that who was it? Detroit had, as well. You've got to be able to run the football and have your totality of your offense has got to be able to have a more play-by-play consistency of positivity for starters.
How about first possession touchdowns? How many teams scored on the first possession? You were pointing that out all weekend.
Yeah. I mean, you look at both we started the weekend with Houston and Kansas City. Both those teams, I think, got 3-3. But then you move into Washington and Detroit. Didn't both those teams have long drives? I think the Lions were 6 plays, 71 yards, and then Washington. Oh no, Washington only had the field goal to match. So
yeah,
it was really on Sunday.
Yeah.
On Sunday, all 4 teams had opening possession touchdowns. But in the other 2 games, neither team in Kansas City and Houston had opening drive touchdowns, and even though Washington went on to win the game, they did not have an opening possession touchdown. But their second possession, I think, was a touchdown there. So, I guess it goes back to what kind of the things we said. If you're not going to have an opening drive touchdown, you damn sure better get some points, and then we ought to see within the first 2 or 3 possessions a touchdown.
Yeah, for me, there's kind of 3 buckets that I look at that Pittsburgh will have to model after. Creativity. You see some of these offenses, and there's always a risk, as the Lions showed, but still, there's something to be said about kind of their creativity and adding some wrinkles into how these offenses work that produce points. The Lions still scored 31. Most playoff games, 31 is going to get you the victory. The defense just melted, and they threw a pick 6, and they had a bunch of injuries. They lost Amik Robertson mid-game, all that kind of stuff. Aggressiveness. I'm going to write an article on this. I need to pull up all the stats, but how many fourth down attempts did we see from teams in this game in non-necessary situations? Just we're not going to kick the field goal. We're not going to punt. We're going to go for it, and we're going to convert. And, Pittsburgh is not an aggressive offense. We saw them live in their fears a lot, including in the playoff game, punting on that 4th and half a yard. Early in the game, and Baltimore goes for it later on 4th and 1 from their 30, and they convert. The other thing too, and this one is obvious, but just taking care of the football. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dave. I believe all 4 teams that won this weekend combined for 0 giveaways.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
I mean, there was turnover. They won the turnover battle. They took the football away, but 0 collective giveaways by the 4 teams that won this weekend. That is a remarkable stat.
Well, you'll get no argument out of Mike Tomlin out of that one.
Sure. That has been their MO for a while. Yeah.
Right. Win the turnover battle. Right. Here's something else that Trey Wingo, I think, posted this morning from who's he with now? 33rd team. I'm old enough to remember when Trey Wingo was on Sports Center.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, that was my growing up days.
Most total yards, the losing team in all 4 of these games won the total yards battle, but yet the winner of the game was not was obviously did not win the total yards in there. Now, look, you can't rubber stamp some of these things across the board, right? But I thought that was an interesting stat that he pulled up here. Look, I mean, you can't turn the football over. In any NFL game during the season, you better win the turnover battle. You can win games if you don't win the turnover battle, but when you get into the postseason time, it is hard to win the games if you're turning the football over 2 or more times in a game.
Mm-hmm. It is, but even I would say more so than that, winning the turnover battle is one component, but literally not turning the ball over once yourself. That is what all those 4 teams did. And I think the Chiefs didn't win the turnover battle. I think it was 0-0, but you took care of the football. You're not hurting yourself. You're not losing possessions. You're not missing out on scoring opportunities. You're not giving the opposition a short field and easy scoring moments there. Now, there are some turnover on downs that happen, and you can debate about if those are turnovers or not. But in terms of literal, what goes down in the box score, takeaways or giveaways, you're not seeing that. And in Pittsburgh, that has been their theory, almost maybe to a fault, by playing too conservatively in past years, about being hyper protective, about taking care of the football. But just struck me just to see for all 4 teams that won, that are playing next Sunday, to have 0 combined giveaways is telling.
That dadgum Patrick Mahomes did it again. 4.5 average completed air yard distance against the Texans. So his average completion in that game on how many completions did he have in
16.
that game, which is fairly low. Had an air distance past the line of scrimmage of 4.5 yards, and his adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat number for the game was 6.5. Once again, with him, another amazing factor of that game, only 1 wide receiver caught a pass from him in that game. Now, he had 5 of them. Xavier Worthy, he had 5 for just 45 yards. And obviously Travis Kelce, was the main producer in that. 7 receptions for 117 yards for a touchdown. But now Mahomes did rush 7 times for 14 yards. Nothing amazing. He didn't kill you really overall with his legs, but he did pick up some key first downs, I think, with his legs in that game. He only passed for 177 yards. He did not throw an interception, though. Did not turn the football over, and that they won the game.
And there were some questionable calls that went their way, which certainly helped, because you look on paper, the Chiefs had 212 yards of offense. They were 4-11 on 3rd down. They didn't take the football away one time. They were 2 of 5 in the red zone. On paper, it says they shouldn't have won this game, but the Chiefs find a way, and they certainly benefited from some calls. But also special teams, another factor too. How many kicks did the Texans miss? And they had had 1 block. They missed an extra point. The Chiefs were on the opening kickoff back 60 plus yards, plus a penalty to set up an easy field goal for them on their opening drive. So special teams also critical in these games.
Right. Agreed.
All right. So all Pittsburgh has to do is find a quarterback, get more creative, get more aggressive, take care of the football, and boom, they're going to be a competitive team again. So
yeah, just push the button, will you?
yeah, just that easy. So Pittsburgh obviously a ways away from doing any of those things, pretty much. All right, Dave, where to from here? Let's talk just kind of
We
some
got everybody
housekeeping.
depressed now, don't we?
Yeah, well, it's 10 degrees here in Pittsburgh, so I'm already pretty depressed about the weather. Bring everyone else down with me is kind of my philosophy. All right, Dave, let's talk about some of the coaching search updates. And there's an important one out of Atlanta. Grady Brown, we talked about on Friday's show, I believe, was interviewing for the Falcons defensive coordinator job. He did not get that job. They ended up hiring the Falcons to Jeff Ulbrich, the former Jets DC and interim head coach in 2024 to replace Jimmy Lake in Atlanta. And so Grady Brown, unless other interviews come along throughout the cycle, which is possible with 6 teams still yet to hire a head coach, Brown expected to remain in Pittsburgh in 2025. I like Grady Brown. I think he's a good coach. I know some people look at the results of the last month of the season, the secondary issues, and don't think that. But I think it's more to coaching than just one slice of a season. And, obviously be great if he got promoted for him personally, but I'll be very happy if Grady Brown stays.
Yeah, I think this is, and, with him, Mike Tomlin and Raheem Morris are very close friends, right? So it would have been pretty shocking had Grady Brown got a defensive coordinator job this offseason, or will be very, very surprising if he gets one. But this is him rising through the ranks. This is him getting used to the interview process. It would make sense, especially from a Rooney Rule aspect of it, for Grady Brown to be on the list to get kind of these interviews. So not shocked that he got at least one interview here, and not shocked that it was with Mike Tomlin's good friend Raheem Morris either.
I don't think they needed to interview Brown to fulfill the Rooney Rule. I believe they'd already interviewed 2 minority candidates before in Steve Wilkes and Dennis Ainsley, I believe was his name, from the Packers, because that was my thought too. But I think you're right. There's probably some connection there with Tomlin and Morris, and to let Brown have an opportunity to interview and kind of get a feel for what those conversations are like to maybe prepare him for the future. I thought he was a guy that would have gotten more buzz, a year or two ago, whenever he was just the DC at the Senior Bowl, which is kind of an indication of young and up and coming coaches and how they're viewed around the league. That's kind of cooled off, but him getting his first interview maybe makes him more of a candidate going forward. He's still pretty young, pretty new to the NFL, got hired in 2021. I just think he's a good coach. I just think the body of work, you watch him at training camp, the turnover culture he's in charge of, the takeaways that Pittsburgh produces. Yes, there's issues with Porter's development, and the secondary had their woes. How much do you blame that on Brown? Some, I'm sure, but maybe not all. But you also want to look at the coach himself, how he teaches, how he leads, his principles, his values, all those kinds of things. Sometimes the on-field results themselves do not directly correlate to a positional coach's acumen or ability. So again, I think Brown's a good coach, and I think he'll be a DC someday, but not looking like 2025.
Real quick, let's roll back and look at the regular season adjusted net yards per passing attempt stats on both sides of the football for the 4 remaining teams here. The Eagles, their offensive adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat number was fourth, or not fourth, but their differential was fourth in the league, but their actual offensive number was 6.9. The Bills was 7.9 on offense. The Commanders was 6.7. And then you have one of these teams don't belong in the Kansas City Chiefs at 5.9. So what would the average? Do you have a spreadsheet open where you can find the average of the offensive? I'll read these 4 off to you again to get an average of what the adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat were on offense. It was 6.9, 7.9, 6.7, and 5.9. What's the average of those 4?
6.85.
Okay. Defensively, the Eagles at 4.8. What a nice low number that is. The Bills at 6.0. The Commanders at 6.3. And then the Chiefs at 5.9.
Let me just do the math. That is 5.75 defensively.
Okay. All right.
What was Pittsburgh? How does that compare to Pittsburgh? Which again, the targets 6.85 offensively and 5.75 defensively.
All right. Offensively, the Steelers finished regular season at 6.2 on the offensive side and 5.7 on the defensive side.
So they're right there defensively, despite the issues at the end. They still were dead on offensively. They were off by a little more than half a point.
All right. But offensively, obviously off by about a half a point?
Yeah, about there. So, and then just again, numbers can be skewed a little bit based on how that final stretch went when you face some of those top tier teams in Pittsburgh. Certainly offensively, I'm sure their number over that span was abysmal, and defensively probably wasn't great either.
Right. And on a per play, if you look at average per play and some of the extended metrics from that, the Steelers weren't close, weren't definitely in the top 10 when it comes to those kind of extended metrics.
Dave, some beat writer media chatter, and these things kind of come up in chats and articles. Maybe they're not true proclamations, but Ray Fittipaldo kind of weighed in on the future of some Steelers free agents and some other players, and that included Dan Moore and Broderick Jones, and not really going out on a huge limb here, but his prediction, his belief, understanding is that Dan Moore will hit free agency, sign elsewhere in 2025, and Broderick Jones will shift over to left tackle after playing right tackle his first 2 seasons in Pittsburgh. Is that the right move? Is there a case to be made to move Fautanu to left tackle, considering both these guys were college left tackles, but Jones has a lot more experience at right tackle, so why not keep Jones at his spot and just shift Fautanu over to his natural position?
We haven't seen hardly any out of Fautanu. I'll tell you what, Broderick Jones has not lived up to his draft pedigree, regardless of the side that he's played. Now, obviously, he has not played a lot at left tackle. If you have confidence that Fautanu can play either side, then you need to take a hard look at whatever side you deem. Broderick Jones has got to be better. End of story, regardless of where you put him.
Sure. It's going to be a huge third year for Broderick Jones to, I think, determine his future. Is he going to be a starter for this team, or are they going to start looking for other options?
Right. So, yeah, obviously, I'm not alone in just wishing we would have been able to see more out of Fautanu this year.
Yeah, the team was super. I mean, they seemed as high on him as a rookie, more so than I can remember any rookie in recent memory. They were eager to get this guy in the lineup, and fortunately, the MCL injury in the summer first derailed that, and of course, the dislocated kneecap before week 3 ended the season.
How do you, we had this conversation, coming out of the draft and all like that, about, Fautanu has the arm length, but he doesn't have the length, the other length, with the height and all like that. Does that at all worry you at all?
I mean, it doesn't matter in the sense of left tackle, right tackle. Is there a concern? I'd have to look at maybe some of the history, but as long as you have the length, I mean, which you said Fautanu does, I think 34 or so inches, right around what Broderick Jones is at. That's what matters the most to me. Even that's not the say-all end-all, but if you're looking at kind of tackle size, I look at the arm length, and he's fine there. So, short answer, no, I'm not really worried by the stature of Fautanu.
Do you what? I mean, you've got a lot of tape on Broderick Jones now at this point, right?
You do, but he's still, 22, and we've seen Dan Moore get better over time, and I think Pittsburgh's hope is that it's a young tackle that barely played in college, 14 career starts at Georgia. He did have to move to right tackle. Thought he showed some signs of progress his rookie year, regressed his sophomore year. These things aren't always linear, and the team is hoping that a third year will really do Broderick some good.
And there are other guys like Duke and some of these other guys that sometimes, the third, fourth year are the magical years with tackles, right?
Yeah, there is an impatience in the NFL and sometimes over time, especially for young offensive linemen. And we saw that with Dan Moore to a degree where he got better over time. And so I think that's what Pittsburgh is certainly banking on, what they need to have happen.
So unless you got a gift at in the first round, you're not going tackle in this round, right?
Yeah, I hope not. I think you have to stop that streak for this year. I do think, like I said before, you sign a veteran tackle, get some competition, get a plan B in there, and just, of course, good old fashioned injury protection. Yeah, I'm okay with moving Jones over to left tackle to kind of answer the question that I posed earlier.
Yeah, I
But
am as well because I'll tell you what. I mean, even though he didn't play a lot, obviously, come out of Georgia, fairly inexperienced and all. His more natural position was obviously at the left tackle spot. So, you got to get him back over there, and it does feel like Fautano can do either for you. If needed to be, but I think you open things up with getting Jones over to the left side and seeing what that looks like.
how
And
much do you
I
think?
think you made a good point too that during this offseason, this team probably needs to uh, go out and get a versatile mid-range backup that can swing, that you have some level of confidence in. Uh, A, for injury protection, and B, because you need some depth on that experienced tackle depth on that offensive line.
And someone to push Broderick Jones. If the concern is, and there's kind of been some talk about that, even from the team, about him needing to focus more, be a little more committed, finish his plays more. You're just handing this guy the job, and it's okay, Broderick, you're a left tackle. There's no threat to you. Then maybe that, he's not going to get pushed as hard. He should feel a little bit of heat. That's probably what he and what a lot of the young guys need. So, yeah, again, I'm okay with moving him to left tackle. Do you think, though, it's the cure all? I don't think it's the cure all to what's ailing Broderick Jones right now.
Decide.
Yeah, the side. Maybe I'm wrong. I was wrong about Kevin Dotson. I downplayed him not being in his natural spot, and he said that made a world of difference whenever the Rams put him back at right guard. Is that the same situation here?
It doesn't feel like it based on what on the tape so far. He's got to play a lot better. He's just got to get better technique wise. No, I don't think that merely switching him over to the left side is a magic elixir from what I've seen on tape so far. I guess that's what you're asking, right?
Yeah, that is. But it can't hurt, I guess, in some sense. And he's, as you said, it's whatever the reason, whether maybe that is the reason, or just simply he's got to clean up his technique, get his head out of these blocks, be more aggressive, be more consistent with his punch. I know he was hurt earlier this year. Maybe it's health. Maybe it's a combination of all those things. But as you said, this has got to be the year for Broderick Jones.
You talk about going out free agency and getting another tackle. Those things, by the way, those things just don't grow on trees and aren't plethora and all. This kind of thought rolled through my head, and I don't know if he's going to hang it up just yet. But our kind of our annual Kelvin Beachum discussion. Would you and I haven't even looked if I think he's going to be a free agent. Wasn't he on a 1-year deal?
I mean, I can't imagine he's on long-term deals at this stage of his career. I believe he is going to play. I saw an Instagram post the other day from him that said he was going to run it back next year. So I think he does intend to play. And yes, he is a free agent come March.
I mean, he played this year at 1.21 million. And I haven't looked at the list. It's just this is just January fodder or whatnot. But would that be the worst thing in the world to get a guy that traveled and that a guy that you probably obviously wouldn't want starting 17 games for you, but a guy that can come in a pinch and play both spots and help nurture these younger guys? Would that be the worst thing as we sit here in late January?
I actually really like that idea. It's a veteran. It's a great community guy. It's experienced. Maybe there's some wisdom he can impart to a Broderick Jones, perhaps. Yeah, I think that's. I don't know. Is he a swing guy? I don't know how much right tackle he's playing. Maybe he's more just pure left tackle. But no, I think that's a great idea.
I mean, I think over the last couple of years, he's played quite a few snaps at both sides.
Okay, on both sides. Maybe I'll have to check. Maybe he has. I know in Arizona they drafted a couple, pedigree guys. They got Parrish Johnson, he was playing, I think, right tackle. I know Beachum has been playing I'm just kind of talking out of my butt here in terms of the
He
size.
played 213 snaps at left tackle this past season, 519 at right tackle.
Oh, okay.
2023, Beachum played 208 at left tackle, and I don't think he played hardly any at right. I'm not seeing anything at right.
Okay.
2022, we're going back a couple years now. Just 16 at left and 1,158 at right. So I mean, he can man both sides. He's done it.
All right. Well, good. Then my point was wrong and asked and answered. So yeah,
what ideally you would probably do with that. Once again, this is way too early. I apologize for it, but I'm just trying to work the minutia out in my head. Is you obviously move Broderick Jones over to left tackle. You have Fautano at right tackle. You at some point during the summer make sure you get some snaps for Fautano at left tackle, and if Beachum was indeed signed, if something happened in game, you would, if Fautano went down, the Beachum goes in at right tackle, and if Broderick Jones went down, Fautano switches over to left tackle, and Beachum goes in at right tackle, just working the minutia out.
I wouldn't want to do that. I think Beachum could just play left tackle.
Okay.
Right. I mean, because I want Fautano to focus solely on right tackle to be the best right tackle he can be, especially with all the time missed as a rookie.
All right. Well, regardless, maybe we'll see what the tackle situation looks like. I can't imagine this team wanting to dump a lot of money in free agency at an experienced tackle position. Anyways, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it makes a lot of sense. He'll be cheap. He'll be known. I could really see that happening. Come back home, Kelvin Beachum, to where it all started, to probably truly end your career. And I was just scanning at a quick list of other tackle names. It's not impressive. And the names that are, as you said, are going to cost a fair amount because there's always that O-line tax out there, especially for offensive tackles. So I think I really like that idea, Dave. All right, what else do we have? We talked offensive linemen. Let's talk defensive linemen. Let's talk NFL draft. Our first scouting reports going up on the site over the weekend. I think we're up to 5 as of going into Monday, a couple more going up on Monday. Also, our first mock draft Monday from Jonathan Heitritter, releasing his first Steelers mock draft that he will do every Monday until the NFL draft kicks off on April 24th. Dave, we both watched some defensive linemen this weekend. You watched Walter Nolan from Ole Miss. I watched Derek Harmon from Oregon. We're both very early in our process, of course, not going to make any big declarations, but what were your impressions when you watched Nolan on tape?
Before we go there, why did both of us end up on defensive linemen?
Because we recognize it really should be considered as a potential first-round option for Pittsburgh.
Agreed, and because of what had happened down the stretch with this team, right up front. And
you allowed 299 against Baltimore in the playoff game. You start looking at run defense,
right? And I think I've almost become, I don't know why, but maybe it's just because that body type and all like that. When I start diving into draft prospects, for some reason now at this point, I go to two positions. I go to defensive linemen, and I go for those edge rushers to see the kind, that fit kind of the mold of what the Steelers looking outside linebackers. And then with defensive linemen, I measurement scout for that 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", 6'6" guy close to 300 pounds that kind of fits what the Steelers look for. So it's a multi-layered kind of why I start that way, or have been. But I think we both agree that this team, especially if they move on from Larry Ogunjobi, you look at what Keanu Benton has done the first couple of years. You look at Cam Hayward being another year older. You look at what happened down the stretch with this team on the defensive line. I don't think it's unreasonable to think that this team could potentially address the defensive line with their first pick in the draft. There's obviously other areas position-wise that this team could go, and you obviously feel the same way there.
Yeah, I think there's certainly a good case to be made. And even knowing that Cam Hayward had a fantastic season and looks like he can play for the duration of his extension that goes out 2 more years. Remember, when they drafted Cam Hayward in the first round, he sat his first 2 years. Pittsburgh kind of had a 2-year sit plan behind Brett Kiesel, behind Aaron Smith, and that's whenever Hayward got into the lineup his 3rd season. So if you want to map that out to today, you have Hayward for 2 more years. You want to start grooming his replacement. And now, obviously, this guy, if you drafted a Harmon or Nolan or whoever, would play more early based on other needs, likely releasing Ogunjobi, just rookies in general play. They don't sit for 2 years the way that Hayward did. But it's kind of the same idea of a 2-year replacement plan that Pittsburgh could be getting out ahead of.
All right. You want me to start with Nolan?
Yeah. Go through. I've not watched him. I know very little about him. We do have a report coming on him in a couple of days, but hit me.
All right, very impressive. The tape is very, very impressive. To me, this is easily a guy that's going to go within the first 50 picks of the draft. I have not, I'm just scratching the surface there, but this guy does indeed seem like a first round quality player. Now, there's a lot of different this time of year until you get these guys into a measurement situation at the Senior Bowl or the Shrine Bowl or the Combine, whether you're going to see some inconsistencies with the measurements. I will tell you what Draft Scout, who does a very good job within this, has him listed at. They have him listed at 6'3" and 2/8, 305 pounds. There are other places I think that might have him at like 6'5" or something like that. I will tell you this: he does not look like he's 6'4" or 6'5" on tape. It does look like 6'3", 2/8 is probably, or 6'3" and maybe a half is probably where this thing's going to come in at. I'm not, the way he moves, the way he looks, I don't know if he weighs 305. If he does, he carries it damn well overall there. As far as where he lined up on the offense or on the defensive line for Ole Miss, and this was a Texas A&M portal guy that went to Ole Miss and all. Lined up pretty much all over that defensive line there overall, and was pretty much impressive anywhere that you put him. Nice quickness off the ball. I can't wait to see I can't find anything on his arm length, but from the way he plays and the way he uses his arms and his active hands and all like that, he should have some impressive arms on him.
You think at least 33? Just kind of the
benchmark. I'll be disappointed if they're not. Just by the way he play, but by looking at both the TV tape and the all 22. Very nice balance with him, nice explosion, nice low center of gravity, really can shock some guys coming off the ball with those hands, has a nice club arm over, can use power with the bull. Even a couple instances you'll see the spin, impressive balance overall. Does good shedding blocks. Definitely a one gap. You see him asked to more one gap than anything. I think in some instances where you see him 2 gap, he is able to anchor and use his balance to not get moved, to not get turned, comes off of blocks real well, has a very nice motor to him, a guy that can get after the quarterback and push the pocket from the middle, from either a one tech 0-2, but this guy can play all out. I think my main take, just impressive on a multi-game aspect at Ole Miss against good quality SEC type competition. Very impressive. I think where teams are going to come down on him, though, it is kind of hard to see him further out because of the overall lack of height on him. So I think this guy in the Steelers system is going to be more of a guy that's going to have to play, over the guard or in more. Obviously going to be attractive to 4-3 teams as a defensive tackle. If the Steelers were to draft this guy, I would think you start him off initially as a base interior player. And then that would obviously mean probably kicking Keanu Benton out to the outside. But I could see the Steelers looking hard and heavy at Walter Nolan, especially at the Senior Bowl coming up here, as potentially a guy. Look, you don't turn down. People are going to learn the name of Walter Nolan as we go throughout this process and as he gets into the NFL. He is an impactful player.
So your thought would be in Pittsburgh's base 3-4, he'd be a nose tackle?
I think so, yes.
Okay. And then play 3-tech in sub packages?
Yes.
Okay. I like it. Yeah, no, it all sounds really good. Not that it's a say, what was his productivity like in college? How productive was he? You said he was what transfer? Where did he come from before?
Was Texas A&M. Let me pull back up his stats here. Stat head.
We do know Pittsburgh likes their guys to have some measure of productivity. Power 5.
Let's see. Had 48 total tackles, 14 tackles for loss this past season, 6.5 sacks. 3 passes defense, 2 fumble recoveries. Yeah. I mean, and even at Texas A&M in 2023, 37 combined tackles, 9 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, 1 pass defense there. So he definitely had the productivity there, especially in behind the line of scrimmage type plays.
How good of an athlete was he just overall?
Man, he's impressive. He, and because of that, I'm interested if he, and look, I mean, you get into the combine stuff and all like that, and guys drop some weight to run faster and all like that. I do kind of wonder. I'm interested if he hits that 300 mark at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, to play nose tackle, I know you don't have to be the 330-pound plugger that you used to be, but if you're 295 or 299, might be harder to put that guy as a 3-4 nose tackle to stop the run. How good do you think he can anchor and take on double teams and reduce surface area and stop the run from those tackle spots?
He is impressive. He has, let me tell you, what was one of the things or at least I talked about Keanu Benton, and I think maybe you agree, and I think this is what ended up having Keanu Benton be a second-round guy was the balance. And especially against the run and being knocked off his feet. And I think on a snap basis, Walter Nolan is better in that area, especially in the middle of a defensive line.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, it sounds really good. Are there any glaring weaknesses in this game? I mean, it sounds really positive overall, but is there any one thing he needs to work on?
I think, and I have not, I want to look at this more strung out over a multi-game, and I think I've got all the TV tape on him thanks to YouTube TV. If not, I've got a good 10 of them. I have not converted this, just more consistency on a snap per snap basis.
Okay. In regards to
just maybe the motor.
Okay.
And I have not confirmed that. I'm just telling you what I see from some guys that I kind of trust. I did not in the selection that I saw of the 2 games. I did not, that did not hit me when it comes to that. And I went and looked for I haven't really looked at any interviews. I don't know what he is as a character guy or anything like that.
Okay. But do you think someone, and it's very early and we're not here to make any proclamations on January 20th, but someone who should be in contention for pick 21?
I think he should be, and I think he's going to get looks at a lot of teams, both as a 3-4-4-3 front type
Okay.
guy.
All right. Good to know. I'll have a report. I'm not sure what exactly your report's conclusion was, but it'll be up here in a couple of days. But it sounds like a guy we'll be talking about a whole lot, and someone I'm guessing Pittsburgh's going to show some interest in the pre-draft process.
I mean, remembering back to Keanu Benton, and that was a guy both of us kind of out of the chute last year, and it was the first report I think that you did last year before the Senior Bowl, and we were both, fairly bullish on him as well too. I think as far as a guy that's going to play in between the guards, I think pound for pound, his Nolan's college tape's better than Benton's.
Yeah, I think that was the thing with Benton and why he slipped a bit was the college tape wasn't quite as refined. The production wasn't overwhelming, especially as a pass rusher. As you said, maybe some balance and staying on his feet things. And so I thought Benton was maybe a little bit more of a lump of clay. That maybe it sounds like Nolan's more of a finished product compared to Benton coming out of school. Is that accurate?
Yeah,
to
yeah. And I guess the other part of the conversation is do we think that Benton can kick out?
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly capable. I think from a size standpoint, he's done a little bit of that when Cam got hurt in 23. Benton played some more end. He played some end. Benton did early at Wisconsin. I still like him, though, rushing over guard, rushing over center in particular. And so I still have a preference to probably keep Benton inside. But it sounds like these guys are versatile and can move up and down the line. That kind of gives you some flexibility.
I think Nolan does a good job too on twist and stunts and games and all too.
Which Pittsburgh could frankly use. They did not do a
Right.
good job with their stunts this year. I mean, and that's kind of a really specific point, but they were not effective in terms of getting home, running twists in games.
I wish that Nolan had more height to him is the only thing I can come away with overall. And I do wonder if he's going to hit the 300 mark at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, it's interesting. Pittsburgh has seemed to, when they sacrifice some physical element with a D line, it's been length. They want guys who are tall. They want guys who are consistently 6'4", 6'5" plus. They've been sacrificing length on guys like Lee in Loudermilk. And I don't know if Benton, what was his arm length? I think he was kind of average arm length coming out of Wisconsin. So it's interesting. You would think they would prioritize length a little bit more and sacrifice the height, but they want guys who are 6'4", 6'5", 300 plus. And if the guy has 32.5-inch arms, they're willing to make the exception there. Benton was almost 34 inches, so he's a pretty long guy.
I would think Nolan's arms are at least going to hit that. I'd be disappointed if they don't.
But if they don't, is that disqualifying? Because I don't think it would be based on how Pittsburgh's drafted.
What has been the average arm length on your look for defensive linemen?
I'll have to check, but we know that there's been some more recent exceptions to it, and it is a new scouting regime. There's a bunch of new scouts in there. It's obviously Omar Khan, Andy Weidel getting involved, and so Lee and Loudermilk and what was Leal? I'm not sure what Leal was, and he was kind of a tweener type, but we've seen this team sacrifice a bit of length.
Hey, here's the thing that, and this boils back to precedents that we talked about not too long ago here. And who was the FSU lineman that came out that had the shorter arms that was impressive for the
Fisk?
Yeah.
Braden Fisk.
What was his arm length?
He was a stubby guy. Obviously, he's doing a great job out there with the Rams, right. And they really built up that D line with Verse and Fisk getting those teammates, and they were impactful even in that loss to the Eagles. 31 inches, very, very T-Rexy.
Right, and that guy's been impressed. I mean, his production at the NFL level has matched the production kind of that you saw on tape with him. Mm-hmm. I would like to see the Steelers scout and draft more based on what the damn tape says than what the yardstick says.
Yeah, I get that. And for what it's worth, for our look for study for defensive ends, so not nose tackles, I had just 32 inches was the minimum requirement. And they drafted Logan Lee, who checked every box on our list, by the way, in our study we did at 32.25-inch arms. And so length is maybe something they're prioritizing less these days.
All right, as you can tell, I came away this weekend as bullish on Nolan.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And I had a similar take on Derek Harmon. I don't know if I got quite Keanu Benton, like this guy's destined to be a Steeler vibes, but I certainly like Harmon. What exactly is he going to weigh in at? We're not entirely sure. He's listed, and I'm just going off of school listings until we get something official. I know school listings can be off by sometimes quite a bit, but listed 6'5", 310. He carries it well. He was a bigger guy. He had weight issues early in his college career. He was at Michigan State before Oregon. He got up to 330, maybe even 350, and he dropped a bunch of weight, got in shape, really transformed his body. He's strong. He's able to get off of blocks. He requires 4 hands on him. He's got good power as a rusher. He's able to use his hands well. He wins in multiple ways, swipes and swims and rips. I think he bends through contact well. I don't think he's a super twitched up guy. He's a more linear, he's got good foot speed, but not going to be great change of direction. He's got to finish some tackles and finish some plays better. He's got to be able to consistently get his arms extended out, not play chest to chest in the run game. But I think he's got all the physical tools. He played in an odd front. He played in a 3-4 in Oregon, so it's kind of a pro-style defense, played base end, played some nose tackle. So I think that's going to make him an easier projection to the NFL level, kind of like the Wisconsin guys that Pittsburgh collects because they're playing in systems similar to their own. He was productive. He's seemingly high character. And so that's a guy that I think will also be on Pittsburgh's radar.
Draft Scout has him 6'3.5", a little bit taller than Nolan, 310 pounds, a little heavier than Nolan.
Okay, yeah. So we'll see what he weighs in. But
does he look that?
I'm the worst at judging eye test heights and weights and all those kinds of things. I mean, he looks big. I mean, he carries his weight well. I mean, to me, he looked like he was 6'4", 300 plus with probably 33 plus inch arms.
Okay. Where do you see where was his best fit up and down the line, or was he pretty versatile?
I mean, he played up and down the line. I think he's really could play anything, but I think he was primarily more base end. I played left end and right end. He played at different stances: left hand stance, right hand stance, different track stances, square stances, 4-point stances. I mean, he was pretty versatile overall, but I think he could be a base. I mean, my comp to him was Leonard Williams, and he's kind of probably been a little more interior. Williams has been at the NFL level, but I think Harmon's a guy that could basically play up and down Pittsburgh's line.
All right. Did you view him as a slam dunk maybe, and it's way early in this? Is he a top 50? Would you consider, from what you've seen in the past, more of a top 50 prospect or a slam dunk first round guy?
My grade on him from our grading scale that we do to try to put some objectivity to these things was a first rounder, kind of a lower end first round grade, 8.7. That would probably qualify him as a top 50 type of player, but I'm still just working through this process.
How was his balance?
Yeah, it was good. He wasn't really on the ground. He's strong. He's tough to move. So I thought his overall balance, maybe the pad level a little bit high, but overall it was good.
How bullet from my review of Nolan and bullish level on him, is it fair to say I'm more bullish on Nolan than you are on Harmon?
It may sound that way, but
How was his production? How was Harmon's production?
Last year for Oregon, 45 tackles, 10.5 for a loss, 5 sacks, 3 pass deflections, 2 forced fumbles. Career, 17 tackles for loss, 8.5 sacks, 4 deflections, 3 forced fumbles. So yeah, pretty productive overall on a good defense. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like maybe you're a bit higher on Nolan than I am on a Harmon. I liked Harmon a lot. It also just, for me, maybe I'm just starting my scouting journey. And so I'm a little like, I need to watch everybody and kind of see who I like the most to really kind of get a good feel, to be able to really start comparing some people after just watching my first defensive lineman of this draft cycle.
Well, I think my first one that I cracked open last year was Logan Lee, right? Ahead of the East-West Shrine Bowl last year. And I'm a lot more impressed with my first one that I crack open this year in Nolan than I was Logan Lee's tape.
All right. Yeah, well, that makes sense because Lee ended up being a later day 3 guy, and Nolan seems to be pretty likely a first round type of guy. So, all right. We both had the same thought, though, like, let's go watch some defensive linemen.
Right.
And it seems to be a good class. There's others to talk about. Mason Graham, the top name, probably won't make it to Pittsburgh at 21, but good group overall.
All right, that was fun.
Yeah, we'll do that a lot more throughout this draft season. All right, Dave, basically all the topics I had. Anything else you want to hit me with, feel free. Any other late breaking stories, hit me, but that's all I got.
I'm not seeing. Are you seeing anything? Looks like we've got the access to the Shrine Bowl stuff opening up from Eric
Nice.
Galto.
Yeah, we'll be sending
Galco.
guys later this week to the Shrine Bowl, into the Senior Bowl. I won't be going. I'll be holding down the fort here at the Pittsburgh Metroplex Steelers Depot edition, but we'll send Ross McCorkle and Joe Clark and Josh Carney, John the High Tritter, and Dr. Mel and plenty of others to these college all-star games to watch practice, to get interviews, and really get a deep dive into the draft process.
All right, we've got how many draft profiles up now?
We were at 5 as of last night. I think we have a couple more going up today, so we're ahead of pace from last year, which is already super exciting.
All right, how about we get some emails, Alex?
Yep, let's close out today's show, Dave.
Let's start with Nathan Casey. Says, why not a plugger at nose tackle? Dave and Alex, why have the Steelers gone away from the Hampton type nose tackle? I get the concept of being in base much less, but they act as if such a niche role that they don't want that style anymore, even if the big nose can't really rush the passer well. Isn't it worth it for run down stuff? How much interior pass rush juice or any of the D linemen getting? Maybe he couldn't totally collapse the pocket from the inside, but if we could just push the pocket back some and not allow the quarterback to step up while possibly batting some balls down, that would seem like a win. They need anchors in base. He says, I would move Benton to defensive end in a 3-4, and then one of the interior rushers with Cam in the nickel. Either draft a mountain nose tackle or free Braden Fajoko and then play him. Well, Nathan, you probably enjoyed the conversation Alex and I just had about two of these defensive linemen here. I definitely see where Nathan's coming from. I think both of us see where Nathan's coming from here. I think you better take a good hard look at the Baltimore Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals and what those teams do well on the offensive side of football, and pushing the pocket, especially against a guy like Joe Burrow, where he cannot move up into the pocket. Get him moving outside of the pocket more, even though he's going to make plays that way. I think that has to be definitely a consideration there. Playing the run against downhill teams like the Ravens needs to be in consideration. I don't think you need in today's NFL that 6'1", 6'2", 325-pound guy. But you do need a guy that can anchor within there and a guy that pushes the pocket. So I don't think, and even though base, I think what you do want out of a guy that maybe you ask to play nose primarily in your defense in a 3-4 front. I think that you would like him to be able to at least kick out some in sub package and get use out of him in rushing the passer, though. And I think a guy like Nolan can do that for you as well too. So no, I don't think it's crazy overall to look at a guy that can help you with the run for, as he quotes in the title here, why not a plugger at nose tackle?
But can you find a plugger that can also rush the passer at that size is the question. Right.
And I think Nolan does a good job of that.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, but he's asking for like the old school plugger. He's asking for the 325-pound,
right,
like Casey Hampton type.
And can that guy rush the passer?
Yeah, and it's hard to find those guys. That's like a Dexter Lawrence, maybe a little Christian Wilkins type, where they're out there, but those are high-end guys. I'm not opposed to drafting one of those guys high-end, but just trying to find that guy can be difficult. It is a tough balance. Pittsburgh's number one need defensively, their whole philosophy is stopping the run. You earn the right to rush the passer in Pittsburgh, and that's how it should be. But you recognize, and I'm doing the final charting for the Steelers defense. That article should be out in the next day or two. Pittsburgh played more sub package this year than they have since we've ever been tracking. Steelers charting, which goes back to 2014. They played in sub package 73.5% of the time this year. So a lot of two down fronts, not nearly as much base. They played a lot of base last year, but not as much base this year. So it is hard to justify, using heavy investment into that plugger if he can't be an asset to rush the passer and even just one gap and get upfield. So, I think you can still find guys that may not have that Hampton squatty mold, but are still powerful and stout and strong at the point of attack. I don't think you have to be 330 pounds to still be able to play along the interior and anchor against the run. But yeah, I get the point overall because Pittsburgh has to make sure they are setting their foundation, they're stopping the run, and that's going to help their pass rush.
They've got to be better up front.
Yeah, they just need some more butt kickers. They do need more pass rush productivity too. Haywood had a good year, but putting Haywood aside, the defensive line combined had 4.5 sacks this year, Dave. Only 2 after the bye week. Those numbers are not good enough. I know sacks may not be the end all. There's pressures and other things, other impacts you can make, but you need more, sack productivity too. And they're not getting that. Ogunjobi just really went quiet, and Benton I thought took a step but not a leap forward.
Where are you at right now on Leal and Logan Lee?
Just kind of dart throws. Leal's going into is this year 4? Is this year 4 for Leal, right?
Is it?
He was the 22 class with Pickens and Austin and Kenny Pickett. And so, he got hurt. He had the neck injury. He had a good summer. I thought Leal was showing some promise and had a good camp and earned his roster spot when he came in very much on the bubble, but really can't expect much, especially as a run defender. His run defense has actually in some ways been better than his pass rush, but he's not going to be huge in my plans. And Lee, I didn't really like the pick to begin with. And, he's, if he can become louder milk, then I'll be happy.
All right. Fair enough. I agree with you on both those there. So good email there. Bryce writes in, he says, got one specific step that he believes the Steelers should take that would help with slow starts. He says, I believe Tomlin should look at all of the organizations who have won playoff games since he won his last playoff game, count the number of coaches those teams have on staff, as well as examine all the titles of those coaches and those teams have hired for, tally up the results to get the average number and hire the number of coaches to his staff, assuming that number of hires is higher than his, hire for the titles that make the most sense for the Steelers and get those young guys more specialized coaching during the week to have them more prepared for when games get started. Alex, I know in the past you weren't as convinced they needed to hire more head count, but think of it as the same as when you thought it mattered less that Kevin Dotson played on the right side. It mattered with Dotson, he says, and I think the lack of coaching head count and ideas matters with Tomlin, the Steelers. So he thinks that especially when it comes to slow starts, that coaching staff size will matter in that.
Well, yeah, listen, I'm always open to having my mind changed, and I just pulled it back up now. I just did I do the annual study of coaching staff sizes to see where Pittsburgh stacks up. And listen, they had the smallest coaching staff in the NFL this year with 19, official coaches, not counting strength and conditioning and some of those pieces like true assistant coaches, on-field type of coaches. To answer the question about where are the teams that are still in the race, what do they have? The Commanders had 24 coaches. The Eagles had 23. The Bills have 21. And the Chiefs have 23. That is average to below average in coaching size. The teams with the most amount of coaches this year, the Dolphins had 27. The Raiders had 27. The Niners had 26. The Falcons had 26. The Vikings had 26. And then a bunch of them had 25. So my takeaways overall been, I don't see a correlation between coaching staff size and team success. There's some examples of large coaching staffs that have had success, the Niners being an example. There's examples of teams with smaller coaching staffs like the Bills, which had one of the smallest coaching staffs that obviously were successful. So to me, I don't just want to take some numbers. Here's some numbers. Let's go hire these number of coaches. You got to hire the right coaches, and that matters more than the quantity of them. I think there's value maybe expanding the coaching staff some for Pittsburgh, sure. but I just don't see a big correlation. My only takeaway, really, frankly, has been the younger coaches have bigger coaching staffs. This kind of new age thing, which kind of has a college type of feel. You look at, Antonio Pierce, Mike McDaniel, Shanahan, Kevin O'Connell, younger, newer coaches, and they tended to have larger coaching staffs. But I've just not really found a lot of correlation between, big coaching staffs and team success. The Ravens had 23, the Rams had 22, the Lions had 22. I'm seeing a lot of really good teams that had pretty small coaching staffs.
All right, good answer. Brian Kotos writes in, what's up, Dave and Alex? Question on the offensive scheme from Artie Smith. Offense wasn't great, obviously, but what can be said about having two different style quarterbacks in Russ and Fields and how he would have had to scheme and play call? Would assume he has one playbook. So how does that differ when each guy is in the game? You see how different teams like the Ravens, Eagles, and Commanders utilize quarterback mobility with design. Can Art do this with Fields or someone like Milroe as our quarterback? Just wondering, he says, how much switching from Fields to Russ stylistically limited his scheme and play calls, if at all.
What
Probably
was
would
your
have seen
kind
more
of
zone reads. You would have there probably was more stuff that he would have been more apt to call with the quarterback mobility aspect of it had Fields been in there.
Sure, no question about that. I would say that, and maybe the language just kind of being a little intentionally loose, but there's not a truly different playbook with Russ in there. It's the same playbook. Now, what you do is when you build your game plan, and especially late in the week when you have meetings with, Russ, and you hear about those Friday night late nights those guys had together, you're working on, okay, what do you like here, Russ? What do you want as your top red zone calls, your top third down calls, your top gotta have it calls? And those can differ between quarterback based on their preference. And so those are the differences you get in terms of how your offense is called and run. You kind of tailor each situation to what a guy likes and what he's going to be most comfortable with. Because if he's not comfortable running it, then probably don't want to call the play. But I thought also there were some things that Wilson did well that worked with what Smith's ideals are, which is play action and some of these bootlegs that Pittsburgh was running really successfully before the collapse. So, what was the point of the question? Maybe I'm kind of missing.
I guess it would be. He wonders how much switching from Fields to Russ stylistically limited the Arthur Smith scheme and play calls.
Yeah, it's hard to answer. I mean, you hear the reporting that those guys, Wilson and Arthur Smith, didn't have a great working relationship. I wish we had more information on what that meant, because I'm still unclear and uncertain, because I thought Wilson still fit Smith's offense in some respects, again, especially play action. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's just tough any time you're making that big quarterback switch, regardless of the reason, injury or poor play or Pittsburgh's unique situation. I just don't have a great answer to that question.
Would we have seen more zone read stuff with the quarterback and maybe more RPO stuff, higher degree of RPO stuff had Fields played more?
I'm not sure about RPOs, but yeah, you would have seen more zone reads and more design quarterback run game. No question. But I don't know, like, how much would the passing game conceptually, how much would that have changed?
I don't think much.
I mean, again, I do think they got to lean on play action a lot more, because Fields was really, really poor at selling play action, and the offense as a whole, and it's not just Fields. There's a lot of components to it. The O-line, high hat, low hat, the running back selling it. But, Wilson, that was an immediate thing. And really play action wilted by the end of the season. It was not as effective. The boot game went, belly up. I don't know. I'm kind of rambling at this point. It's an important question. I would love to know the answer. I would love to know more about the potential rocky relationship that Smith and Wilson had and why that was. Was that Wilson wanting more freedom? Was that him checking out of too many plays? I have no idea, but I really would love to get some clarity on that.
I would like to get more clarity on the specula reports, I guess you'd call them, about, maybe Arthur Smith wanting to stick with Justin Fields instead of going to Russell Wilson once Russell was healthy. how much of that is true. If some of that is true, why? You know,
I mean, I think
we'll never know, probably.
yeah, I could take a good guess of maybe why Smith would want to keep Fields, because the quarterback run element, and Fields was taking some strides. I think the Raiders game, that last start he had, was a pretty poor game, but I think they were 4-2. They were running the ball pretty well. They were having success, and quarterback switches midseason can be tough to do, to kind of restart and go down a little different track. So that's just my guess. But I mean, as you said, would like some more. Maybe if Smith gets hired as a head coach with the Jets, we'll find out more of this information. Maybe some stuff will leak, but hard to say.
All right. One last one from Jim Bendis, and we'll wrap it up here. He says, as we look backwards to the 2024 season, all of us tend to focus on all that went wrong on the Steelers season, which is fair, but no one is looking at what went right and the areas that we improved in 2024. He says the bright spots, if you will, like we finally have a long-term center solution. What are your thoughts on this? Yeah, I mean, I thought obviously, and we talked about this, I thought the play of the offensive line did deteriorate the harder the later in the season. Now, was that guys hitting walls, being kind of more tired and not physically up to the challenge and all like that? But I mean, yeah, it's hard to come out of the 2024 season not being impressed with what the Steelers have in center in Zach Frazier. I think he is as advertised. I think there is room for his game to grow and get even better, even more consistent moving forward. I think he's going to be a guy that you talk about on a year-to-year basis, potential Pro Bowl All-Pro. So I think that is a positive.
Yeah, I mean, there are certainly some positives, and you feel like you have some young offensive linemen that can hopefully grow and develop. And I thought McCormick still had a successful season overall, given all he had to deal with. A rookie, making the jump to the NFL from FCS, playing right guard, all that kind of stuff.
And remember, this is a guy that played very little outside of left guard in college.
He was almost exclusively, like 99% of his snaps at left guard. And so, yeah, there are some takeaways, but listen, when you lose your last 5, when you have one of the worst collapses in Steelers history, when you're held under 18 points per game over your final 5, when you have all the issues that Pittsburgh had, when you get one and done in the playoffs to a divisional opponent that ran for $299 on you, I mean, there's going to be a lot of negativity to talk about.
All right. The other aspect he has here is, what are your thoughts on Hard Knocks affecting the Steelers slide? I thought one of your guys writing a story that other teams were using these episodes to get inside Tomlin's mind. Look, these teams know how Mike Tomlin. I don't think it. All 4 teams had to go through this, so. And the Ravens obviously handled it very well. The Bengals really, from the start of Hard Knocks to the end of Hard Knocks, I thought handled it very well. The Steelers obviously, when it comes to results, didn't. But do you view Hard Knocks as being this huge point as to what led to that collapse of final 5 games?
Short answer, no. It's not even in the top 20 reasons I could offer of why Pittsburgh lost their final 5. Now it's true that, yes, all the teams had to deal with it. Did some teams deal with it better than others? You can look at the results. That's one thing, but internally, I don't know. But no, I mean, that was not the issue. I don't think.
No, at no point during that 5-game slide did I say to myself, damn, if only Hard Knocks was not there.
Yeah, I think if you'd taken the cameras out, Pittsburgh's slide's still going to be their slide no matter what. And yeah, I know that was Sirianni that made a comment about watching Hard Knocks and gleaning some information. That felt to me more like coaching style and philosophy. Obviously, the Hard Knocks showed nothing about, or very little about, scheme. There was some fanfare about containing Burrow, but that's not a big revelation to anyone or anything, I don't think. And the teams, get to have input on what gets cut and what gets aired. So, yeah, there was that comment from Sirianni, but listen, the Steelers just didn't play well. And whether or not the cameras were there, it was not going to impact how the season ended.
And what we saw of the Hard Knocks of Mike Tomlin is kind of who we thought Mike Tomlin, a lot of cliches, I didn't see any different I didn't really see any different side of Mike. I didn't learn anything new about Mike Tomlin from Hard Knocks.
I largely didn't, but I did. It was interesting because it really felt like, and here's some of the comments. He views this as kind of almost like a literal battle, like a literal war, and he's more the general of the team in the way that he spoke and some of the analogies that he made. And so that I thought was interesting. But I mean, overall, yes, we knew that Tomlin can speak and can connect and can hold court better than Zach Taylor. That was not anything that I learned from Hard Knocks.
All right. Okay, I think we got through some there that made this about an hour and a half show, a little bit shorter than normal. We'll continue diving in deeper into this as the off season goes. For now, we'll continue 3 episodes a week unless we deem the flow of information to not be worthy of that. We'll obviously be talking more about draft prospects as we go along within this, and as obviously as the salary cap situation changes with signings or whatnot. But I would imagine that unless there's coaching changes coming up here in this next week, we're not going to be having a lot of overarching things to talk about until Art Rooney speaks later this month, right?
Yeah, it should be pretty quiet, but we always find something. And
Right.
do you think like we're more than a week? I think we're 9 days since Pittsburgh season's ended. Do you think coaching staff changes could still happen, or do you think that Hayes in the barn?
I think if they're going to happen, they would happen this week before
the Senior Bowl.
before the All-Star games get underway.
Yeah, that would make sense. Again, we saw last year these things happen post those events. I think the OC situation was a little different, waiting on a hire there. But yeah, I'm not ruling out. I don't think there's a deadline of today to make coaching changes. That could still happen.
All right. I agree as well. I would not slam the door on seeing some happen just yet. After this week, maybe more so, but we will keep everybody informed in that. All right, Alex, no YouTube live stream tonight. What's going to happen in the college championship game tonight?
It's a good one. Ohio State, Notre Dame. Those were not my picks to make it this far, so that's pretty interesting in itself. I will take, with very much an uninformed opinion, I will take Ohio State.
What's the line on that? I'm leaning towards Ohio State as well. Let me see if I can find the line real quick. Ohio State 8.5 point favorite in this one. Do they cover? Does Ohio State cover that 8.5? I think we're both on board with Ohio State.
Yeah, do not have good takes here. Even worse than usual for me. I'll say yes, but I'm just truly guessing.
I will guess they will cover the 8.5 as well too. I'm hoping it's a competitive, good game.
That's all I care about.
That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Okay. In the meantime, we will be back on Wednesday, and you can follow me on Twitter /X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button. And I think I got all that out of the way there. Until Wednesday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.